Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other, and today's episode is the Deathnote Live Action Episode 8. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened within this episode. So the episode begins with the detectives all sitting around a table and discussing what they have learned since the confrontation with Yotsuba's Kira, and they're looking at the rules of the Death Note and planning their next steps, as obviously they do know there are still other Kiras out there, as they only found the Yotsuba Kira, but they know that there was a second Kira. Once the rest of the task force carries on with their work, Elle and Light reveal that they are, in this version, the only ones who have seen Rem, and so Elle tries to interrogate Rem, but she flies away because Light kept up his end of the bargain of saving Misa, so therefore she's not going to give him away and just flies away. Meanwhile, Light, meeting Misa in the lobby, tells her where to go to find her notebook, hoping that she'll regain her memories and be able to kill Elle with it. However, when she goes to dig up this notebook, she is attacked by a thug that was hired by Mikami, and so the notebook is then stolen and given to Mikami. Light, of course, is distressed by the fact that he has now lost the other notebook and doesn't know where it is, so he then goes to visit Misa, asks her about it. She doesn't know who attacked her. She was attacked from behind. He then joins the investigation to find out who attacked Misa, and they do track down the thug. However, he no longer has the notebook. But as they are speculating on who could it be that's now started to kill people again, in a similar fashion to the original Kira, in that they are only targeting heinous criminals, we discover that Elle wonders if it could potentially be a Kira worshipper. And this, of course, rings bells in Light's mind, as in a previous episode, Mikami had approached Misa wanting to help her, and he then realizes that potentially there's a connection there, so he calls Misa. Misa gives him Mikami's name. He then goes back to the thug's residence, breaks in, finds Mikami's number, and when he calls Mikami, Mikami is, of course, very happy to work with Kira, and they agree to work together. So Mikami sets up to go and retrieve the notebook from Elle at the task force. However, upon arrival, he finds out that Elle and also Light are not there because Elle has set Light up at a warehouse to basically try to get him to confess to being Kira on camera. However, he fails at that, so then he basically goes up to the camera and says, everything I do from this point on is my own personal actions, not related to the investigation, and he unplugs the camera. And then he confronts Light, pretends to write his name in the notebook, and Light, of course, then snatches that. They get into a fight, and Light manages to get the notebook, but Elle taunts him that you don't know my name, so you only have, two choices, turn yourself in or, die. And then Light gets a text message, and this actor is very good with the facial expressions of crazy, and he gets this very stretched, very evil smile on his face as he starts to laugh like a crazy person, and it is revealed that the text that he got was from Mikami, who, having been at headquarters while the camera was rolling and has made the ideal, was able to see Elle's name, and he texted it to Light, so then Light says, Ryuga, no, Elle, no, Elle Lowlight. And then he writes his name and waits for the timing, and of course he's completely given himself away at this point, full confession, because he thinks he's won. However, after the timer ends, Elle's still alive because it was a fake notebook all along, and that is where this episode ends. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode, and as always, we will be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list first, followed by the personal ranking list. So, for our mostly objective rank values, we start with our single episode supporting character introduction, which is the thug that was hired, who was a former private detective, I believe they said, who was embezzling funds and such, and then was let go and now is a thug, and his name was Yutagawa Hiroki. He does end up dying. It is unclear whether Nier killed him or Mikami did, because we see Nier questioning Yutagawa and then calling Ellen saying he's dead after they get into a bit of a fight. So it could have been Nier who killed him, but then also the body is clutching his heart, so it could also have been Mikami. Because it's not stated, I didn't count that in the points. But either way, we were introduced for a single episode to Yutagawa, which was 1 point. Then we have a positive 3 points for our multi-episode supporting character development, and this has to do with Mikami. So we have Mikami hiring the thug to steal the notebook and then going on a killing spree with it. Positive 3. We also have an additional 3 points as we do get some flashbacks from Mikami where he recounts his school days and how he was the class president and he always tried to do best by everybody in his class. But, with bullies, sometimes he would try to confront them and they would not listen. And even his mother told him to give up on justice, that justice isn't perfect, and how that always never sat right with him. That's why he became a prosecutor. But even upon becoming a prosecutor, he was disillusioned because even as a prosecutor, he still could not get all of the criminals if there wasn't enough evidence and had to let some go. And so he is incredibly grateful for the coming of the notebook so that he can now do as Kira does and get rid of the people who deserve to be gotten rid of, but that the justice system is failing. So a lot of character development through that flashback. Then we have positive 3 points for some impactful, memorable moment line, etc. And I would say that's the warehouse confrontation. In the original anime, the only warehouse confrontation we got was between Nier and Light at the very end when, Light loses. And I like how they kind of repurposed that for it to be L who did that, because that was always one of my gripes with the anime, was that like the second part had the errors coming in, but I had no reason to believe that they were better than L, and I felt like they kind of cheated because they were, sneaky investigating instead of playing the cat and mouse until they had enough to win. And well, I just felt like it lost a lot of its magic. In this one, they actually have L working with Nier openly and introducing Nier to the task force while he's still alive, and then L is the one who confronts Light in the warehouse, and he has like this one particular line about how he thought it'd be fine to I'm paraphrasing here, but how he thought it'd be fine to and fun to solve a crime that had no clues, and that he didn't really care who Kira was. But then he met Light, and for the first time he became interested in a person, and he doesn't want it to be his friend, and he wants to give his friend the opportunity to turn away from what he's doing, to atone for his sins. And then upon realizing that Light cannot turn back on his own free will, decides that's when he fakes writing Light's name and so on and so forth. But I thought that was a cute moment. There's the whole confrontation in the warehouse. I feel like it's very memorable and impactful. There's also the fact that they end up fighting physically within the confrontation, which is something that didn't happen in the anime at all. And I thought that was great, especially since we missed all the handcuff fights because they were only handcuffed for like 30 seconds. This is kind of giving that to us in a different way, which I appreciated as well. So, like I said, impactful and memorable. Honorable mention as well was when Light, in order to get Mikami to trust him, sends him apples and says that it's an act of goodwill for you both. And then Ryuk immediately eats all the apples, is super happy that there's apples there because, Ryuk's one true love is apples. And then that is what gets Mikami to realize, oh my gosh, this is actually Kira I'm talking with, and agree to work with him. But I only gave that honorable mention because it was just, delivering apples ultimately, but I did really enjoy the moment. So 3 points, and we can just lump all of that together. Then we have our multi-episode main character development, which was Misa being attacked, which was worth 4 points. And because I already put it in the impactful, memorable moment line, etc., I'm not really going to note down the whole warehouse scene. However, also worth another 4 points is that Light gets L's name, but ends up writing it in the fake notebook, which means that he doesn't end up killing L in this episode, but again, did get his true name, which is a major move forward. And then there was a negative in this episode, which of course was hiring a criminal to attack Misa, especially the hypocrisy of it, because, Mikami is wanting to be like Kira, all about justice, and here you are conspiring with a criminal to go and attack a girl who at this point is innocent because she doesn't have her memories, thieving from her, and then taking the notebook to go on a killing spree. So there's just that general hypocrisy. But to cushion it a bit, Mikami does get angry at Yutagawa as he did tell her tell him not to harm her, not to harm Misa. But it also was a minor injury. But either way, even with the cushioning, it is still negative behavior and messaging and hypocrisy at its finest, and so we are taking 2 points. But that does leave us with 16 points total, which is over 10, and therefore this is a 10 out of 10 episode. Which brings us now to the mostly objective ranking so far, and frankly speaking, when more than one episode has the same score, we rank in episode order, and so far, objectively, this has been the first perfect series on the channel, as we have only had 10 so far. So our scoring is in episode order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, my personal ranking. I really liked this episode as well. However, I did also feel like there was a lot of talking. There was a lot of meetings that occurred. There was that little side quest to go after Yutagawa that kind of slowed the pacing a bit on the show, which led to some moments of boredom. Not a lot, but there were a few moments where it was kind of checking the time, like how much longer do we have in this, or how much time has passed. As I was streaming, because you can see how long you've been watching for. And usually I feel like if I do that, then I'm probably pretty disengaged with what's happening on screen for the moment, at least. Of course, it redeemed itself with the epic warehouse scene at the end, and the apple scene was great. But like I said, there was a lot of talking, a lot of in-between stuff, kind of side quests. That did bring it down just a touch. So instead of a 10, I gave it a 9. And I could go into more details, except for the fact that I feel like I did cover pretty much all of my opinions and things that I wanted to mention in the objective ranking. So I'm not going to repeat it here. But again, really good episode, really enjoyed it, gave it a 9, and that brings the live action ranking so far on the personal side to in first we have episode 7, followed by 4, 1. This episode 8 is in 4th place, and then 5, 6, 3, and so far in last place was episode 2. And that brings us to the series ranking so far. And we have our mostly objective ranking for part 1 of the anime in first at 70.77%, part 2 of the anime in second at 31.82%, sorry, 51.82%, my bad. And then the live action so far has a perfect score for all the episodes that have come so far. So we're at 80 out of a possible 110. On my personal ranking side, I'm a bit harsher. So we had part 1 of the anime in first place with a score of 60.38%, part 2 with a score of 49.09%, and then the live action so far has the score of 71 out of 110, which is still really good, but not perfect. And with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Deathnote Live Action Episode 8. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.